healthcare plan.
And thank you for watching Newsnight. You can catch me anytime on your favorite social media, X, Instagram, and TikTok. CNN's coverage continues next.
Tonight on 360, Todd Chrisley, one of the two reality TV stars the president pardoned, just got out of prison. His wife is next. We talked to their attorney tonight. Also breaking news, a major blow to the Trump tariffs at court has just blocked the bulk of them. And later inside, the training pilots are now getting for moments which have already caused chaos and could come again when radios go dead and air traffic control radar goes blank. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news. Just a day after reality show stars Todd and Julie Chrisley received presidential pardons, Todd Chrisley walked out of a federal prison in Florida today. His wife, Julie, is awaiting release from a facility in Lexington, Kentucky. The one-time co-stars of the reality show Chrisley Knows Best were convicted nearly 3 years ago of conspiring to defraud community banks in the Atlanta area out of millions of dollars in personal loans, as well as tax evasion and attempting to defraud the IRS. Last summer, their daughter, Savannah, who was a vocal supporter of the Trump campaign, was a featured speaker at the Republican National Convention.
Justice, it's supposed to be blind, but today we have a two-faced justice system. Just look at what they're doing to President Trump. Donald J. Trump has only one conviction that matters, and that is his conviction to make America great again.
Well, to her point about justice not being blind, her parents were indicted in 2019 during the first Trump administration by the Department of Justice. They were convicted in 2022 after a 3-week trial, which included evidence they submitted false bank statements, audit reports, and personal financial statements to obtain loans. Money they then spent on luxury cars, designer clothes, real estate, and travel. Jurors also heard testimony that when the money was gone, Todd Chrisley filed for bankruptcy, avoiding paying back some $20 million in loans. He got 12 years, his wife got 7. They appealed to the 11th Circuit Court, which upheld their convictions, but found a legal error in how Julie Chrisley's sentence was calculated. The panel ordered her case back to district court for resentencing, which ended with her receiving the exact same 7-year prison sentence. Now, it's important to note that the appeals panel found no other evidence of error by the trial judge or misconduct by investigators or prosecutors. In other words, no evidence they were victims of what their daughter, the Republican convention, called rogue prosecutors. Nor did the panel buy defense arguments that an IRS officer lied at trial or that prosecutors failed to show evidence to convict the Chrisleys on several of the charges. Joining me is Alex Little, appeals attorney for Todd and Julie Chrisley. I spoke to him just before air. The Chrisleys were indicted by a grand jury in 2019, then convicted by a jury in 2022 after a 3-week trial, 3 days of deliberations. You were then hired to appeal, and your appeal, which was very well argued, very thoughtful, was largely rejected. Why do you think they deserve a pardon?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think if folks want to go back and look at it, there's a difference between what your appellate issues might be and then the general issues with justice in a case. The biggest issue here was it's very clear the case would have never happened if they were not celebrities. The FBI looked at this case way back at the beginning, 2016, 2017, the early days, or 2006, 2007, and said, we're not interested. You know, years later, the Chrisleys become celebrities, and all of a sudden the FBI picks up the case again. And I think that sort of targeting based on who you are publicly is what this president's made very clear he doesn't want to condone.
But how can you say that they were targeted? I mean, their crimes, according to what they were convicted of, continued well beyond 2006, 2007, when you said the FBI was no longer interested. I mean, 2008, 2009, 2010,
yeah.
I mean, all the way into the teens.
Well, no, and in the teens, a whistleblower went to the FBI, I think it was in 2013, and said, we want, hey, you should take this case. And the FBI said, no, we're not interested. There was a 6-year gap there until the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office came back, and it was after they became celebrities. So, this is a case, and that's in the record. It's pretty clear that there was not a lot of interest until they became, folks you see on TV.
Do the Chrisleys accept responsibility for their crimes?
I think they never testified at trial. I wish they had. I wasn't there to testify at trial because I think their story of what happened has been pretty clear. They were involved in a number of activities when the real estate collapse happened in 2008 that I think they probably wouldn't do again, or at least Todd wouldn't do again. There was very little evidence at all ever about Julie. And I think ultimately, you'll hear Todd talk about that soon.
There was evidence against them both. I mean, there were bogus financial statements submitted to multiple banks, 2009, 2010. Sure. The government's indictment also went on to say that like in 2012, in a sworn affidavit, Todd Chrisley asserted that the co-conspirator had used their accountant's stationery and signature without the knowledge or consent of him. And then 3 months later, he emailed the co-conspirator saying, quote, and I quote, "Can you place this on the accountant's letterhead with his signature and then sign Julie's name below the accountant's address, the letter to whom it may concern?" I mean, these are things which you should not do. This is not.
Yeah,
this is
but
illegal.
I think, Anderson, that's a little bit of a slanted view. Everything you're talking about came from one person, a guy named Mark Braddock. This was an individual who, at trial, admitted to stealing $6 million from the Chrisleys.
Right,
He was stealing
they were in
multiple
business
millions of
together.
dollars. Yeah, and the government decided to give him a complete pass. They said, we don't want you to go to jail. We don't want to charge you with the crime. We want you to come in here and say something about the Chrisleys. And he
Right,
could
when
never
you were
say
a
anything
prosecutor,
about
you
Julie.
know that always happens. That's how cases are made. This guy, they decided these two were the movers of it, maybe, or for whatever reason, and they gave him immunity.
Yeah, and that happens. What they usually don't do is they let you have a pass. I mean, this Justice Department, generally, you make folks pay a penalty, and they get some benefit, they get cooperation, but they don't get full immunity. And I think that was incredibly unusual here. That the guy who actually filed those documents you're talking about, who created them, was just let to walk home.
But even after they weren't in business together